Well, again, welcome everybody. Hope everybody's Friday afternoon is going well. Hope you have big plans for the weekend, or if you're like me, just relaxation plans for the weekend. My name is Neil Malik, and we are running today a webinar that's covering Microsoft 365 Copilot. Now, before I even get off the ground with Microsoft 365 Copilot and where we're going with this and things like that, I want to bring your attention to the subtitle of today's talk. What is it today? What will it be in the future? When you look at Microsoft 365 Copilot, this is a product that was only made available to the broader audience back in January. So we just over a month having this thing in existence for the vast majority of folks. And the technology behind it is still very, very much evolving and being integrated with all these different tools. So this is definitely a beta product. It's definitely something that you can experiment with, but you can also be a little disappointed by. So Drew and I will be sharing with you some of the highs and lows that we have seen from Copilot over the last month or so. And hopefully you all can see some things that have value here, and you can see what the future looks like over the next couple of years. With that in mind, again, hi, I'm Neil, and I'm the president of Knack Training. And with me today is my colleague, Drew. And ever since Drew joined the team, she has been an absolute automation guru. Good afternoon, Drew. How you doing?
Good afternoon. I'm good. How are you?
Life is good. I can see Saturday right on the horizon. Saturday
So
is headed
close.
headed our way. So yeah, like I said, back in January when Copilot first became available to the little guys, as we're definitely not Fortune 500 around here, but when it became available to the little guys, we jumped on it, got subscriptions to it, and started really kicking the tires on it. And so we're hoping across today's class, as well as next Friday's class, to give you some exposure to the different ways that Copilot can help and the different places where Copilot still has a lot of room to grow. So if you think about this as a concept, we're really hoping to paint the picture of what you would be diving into. Microsoft 365 Copilot is, of course, not the only AI tool out there. It's even not the only AI tool called Copilot, for that matter. So we need to make sure that everybody knows what's what and what is Microsoft 365 Copilot, what it's not. And I'll show you some gotchas. I definitely spent a couple of weeks with Copilot where it wasn't doing anything positive for me, and I realized I needed to make some changes to the settings on the admin panels and things like that. And then I'm going to basically pass the ball over to Drew part of the way through, and she's going to basically show you some really interesting capabilities that it has within the Microsoft 365 space. And a quick note here, 1 week from today, 1 week from right now, another colleague of mine, Chrissy Weems, will be on a webinar with me where we go deep dive with Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, and OneNote with Copilot. This is the overview session, and it is the session about Teams and SharePoint and other products like that. So between these two sessions, hopefully you'll see some very interesting capabilities. Okay. I joked with Drew earlier this week that I would go ahead and be the bad guy on today's call. I'm going to take all of the boring stuff and I'm going to take all of the gotchas, and Drew's just going to get the fun stuff that actually works. And I think it's me being nice. I think it's a good way to distribute the work here. All right. Everybody, for the rest of the session, if you have any questions, go ahead and pop in the chat. ask anything you want. If you want us to kick the tires on anything right here live with you, like I said, we have 365 Copilot subscriptions for all of our setups. So we can show you how it responds in real time for the vast majority of tools. All right, so let's start with some of the boring stuff. The boring stuff is, okay, how are we going to define Microsoft 365 Copilot? What is it? What is it not? How much does it cost? And all of those pieces of the puzzle. Okay, so item number one, Microsoft Copilot. And everybody, if you'll notice here, I dropped the word 365 out of that. In a moment here, it'll be important to know the difference between Microsoft Copilot, Microsoft 365 Copilot, Microsoft Copilot Pro, etc. We'll talk more about that in the very near future. But for this slide, we have everything that is a quote unquote Microsoft Copilot, and then we have the other systems that are out there. So Microsoft Copilot is the tool that came about because Microsoft is a what am I looking for? An investor. That's the word I'm looking for. Microsoft's an investor in OpenAI, who, of course, a year and a half ago now, created the ChatGPT product that really changed a lot of things in this world and caused a whole lot of tumult. So the original OpenAI ChatGPT application is what's known as a large language model AI, and it's trying to answer questions as if a human were answering them. So one of the things you'll hear a lot about with these AIs that are based on large language models is that these AIs will often come back with, some people have called them hallucinations. Early on, when ChatGPT first came out, for example, I asked ChatGPT, who is Neil Malik? And at the top, it started saying, oh, Neil Malik is a Microsoft certified trainer and he runs the business Knack Training. And I was like, oh, that all seems perfectly in line with things. And then it said, Neil has written several books. And then I was like, I don't remember writing any books, ChatGPT. Thanks for the credit, though. That's great. So ChatGPT is not based necessarily on fact. It's based on how it interprets text. So a large language model AI, what its job is to sound like a human when it answers the question, even if it's sounding like a human means that it makes some things up. Now, over time, it's gotten better and better at being more and more factual, but at its core, it being factual is not the essential quality of a chat-based large language model AI. As opposed to other AIs who focus, who is the wrong word there? The other AIs out there that focus on things like getting the math right in something. If you ask ChatGPT or similar AIs a math problem, it may actually return an incorrect answer to that math problem because it's not so much focused on fact as it is focused on what people say to questions like this one. Now, when ChatGPT came out, Microsoft went, okay, great, we're going to make a Copilot based on this. And Google went, oh boy, we need something too. So that's where Google Bard came about. And more relevant for my business is also Google Duet. So Google Duet is the business AI, and both Google Bard, which was the more open platform AI that Google created, as well as Google Duet, which is the business-centric AI that it created, they're both being rebranded currently over to Gemini. So anything that you've seen in the past where people mention the term Google Bard or Google Duet, ultimately all of those references will be switched over to a new term, which is Google Gemini. So Google Gemini is an AI that's built on Google's platform that is not directly derived from ChatGPT. And if you use the version of Google Gemini that was Google Duet, then you can use that AI with your Google-centric business data. So to zoom out here for a second, Knack Training uses both a Microsoft platform and a Google platform for all of our business. And so several of my employees have Google Duet subscriptions, which is again a $30 subscription to get a Google AI to run on the Google Business platform. And in the same way, Microsoft Copilot is an AI, yes, and it's based on what ChatGPT can do, but it also tacks on any information that Microsoft has about you. And so when we talk about Microsoft 365 Copilot, really the differentiator there is the fact that it's allowed to talk about all the things it knows about you and about your business, which is something a ChatGPT doesn't currently do. All right. So when it comes to typical open large language model AIs, you can use what used to be called Bing Chat or Microsoft Copilot. You can use Google Bard and you can use ChatGPT all for free. And then they also introduced the business and the subscription levels where you have to pay money for these. Now, of course, if you've got a business that is centered around Microsoft products, it only makes sense to use a Microsoft-centric AI as opposed to the ones that are not based on Microsoft technology. Now, the other thing that I wish I didn't have to talk about here, everybody, is the fact that if you Google Copilot right now, there are multiple AIs out there called Copilot that are completely unaffiliated with Microsoft. Don't you just love that? I am certain that there is a strong contingent internally at Microsoft that is thinking about rebranding Copilot right now, because the fact that there is Copilot AI and Copilot.com and GitHub Copilot, none of which have anything to do with Microsoft Copilot, it just confuses people. So make sure that when you talk about Copilot, you always tack the word Microsoft in front of it when you're running searches and things like that, because it's very easy for Google to return GitHub Copilot, for example, and that has nothing to do with the Microsoft Copilot. Okay, so in January, we had the broad Microsoft Copilot available. And for example, actually, let me stop the presentation for a moment here, everybody. Because I have the latest version of Windows 11, down here in the corner, I also have Copilot in Windows Preview. This is a free version of Copilot that isn't necessarily tacked on to Microsoft 365, although mine is. And then you will also find that if you go to the website, copilot.microsoft.com, you'll also see Copilot here. And we can all use the broader web-based Copilot and the Windows-based Copilot without a subscription. That is our first column. So standard Copilot, just called Microsoft Copilot, is free. It used to be called Bing Chat Online. And then they introduced two other things, which were Copilot Pro and Microsoft 365 Copilot. So when you get just Microsoft Copilot, you get basically ChatGPT to do generative AI, and Microsoft Copilot uses web data. One of the things you probably heard about ChatGPT early on is that ChatGPT did not actually look on the internet to find you the answers to things. It used stored information from a previous version of the internet a few years back. And so because of that, ChatGPT could often return out-of-date answers for you because it wasn't using a live version of the web. But when Microsoft Copilot came out, it became ChatGPT plus direct access to the live information that's on the internet. So when you see this terminology web grounding, it means that if you go to Microsoft Copilot, just the standard free version, and you ask it a question, it will look on the internet for the answer for you. So why would they introduce this thing called Copilot Pro? It's so that you could pay money to get priority access to the ChatGPT higher level 4 engine. And also, it puts Microsoft Copilot into Word, Excel, and PowerPoint for you. But Copilot Pro is just for individuals. It is not for companies to use. Microsoft 365 Copilot is the only level that is suitable for businesses to use. And that's the one that costs $30 a month. And of course, based on this table, you can see what's coming. Microsoft 365 Copilot does exactly what the other two Copilots do, but it also adds Copilot to Microsoft Teams. It adds an enterprise level data protection to your data. And this is the one that really does it for me specifically. It grounds your information also in your Microsoft Graph. So for example, everybody, when I pull up that web browser, you see up here in the top left, I have a switch that allows me to go back and forth between the work mode for Copilot and the web mode for Copilot. And you see when I switch to the web mode, it just says Copilot. But when I switch to the work mode, it switches to saying Copilot for, oh, come on, ghosts. All right, fast it was. Okay, I clicked over to work mode, and now it says Copilot for 365. So you can, if you are using Copilot for 365, get access to all of your work data. But if you're using standard Copilot, you do not have any access to your work data. That's the differentiator right here, everybody. And that's why the first two columns, Standard Copilot or Copilot Pro, these are only for people who don't belong to larger organizations. If you belong to a larger organization, it only makes sense that your Copilot would be able to look at your organization's data, right? Why else? I mean, if you and your coworkers all have Microsoft Copilot, but you cannot collaborate with Copilot with all the things that are happening inside your organization, then what's the point? So I see this as Copilot Pro does give you some priority level access to Copilot, but ultimately, I think it's really a decision between the free level of Copilot and the business version of Copilot, because the integration of Copilot into Teams and into the rest of your Microsoft data is night and day. It really is. So personally, I don't see a lot of use cases where I would recommend somebody get a Copilot Pro subscription here. All right. Like I said, I had to be the bad guy up front, talk about costs and what's in the box and what's not in the box and all of that stuff. Appreciate you all sticking with me on that. Does anybody have any questions so far? Does this feel comfortable for you? Are there any things that need clarification? Are we on the same page? Beautiful. So Lori's asking a question, is there still a minimum? There is not. So everybody, for Microsoft 365 Copilot, as of January 15th or 16th, maybe it was somewhere mid-January, you are now able to buy one subscription at a time. And that is very interesting. Now, that being said, I really think Copilot within our organization, and I think Drew can speak to this in a moment when she takes over the presentation, it's very collaborative for us. We use it primarily on our meetings, right? When 5 or 6 of us are in a meeting at the same time, Copilot is that seventh person in the meeting, keeping track of what's going on. And if only one of us had that subscription, it would be imbalanced and strange, right? Because maybe only I would be able to ask questions about that meeting. But yes, you can buy as few as one seat for Microsoft 365 Copilot now, which is, yeah. I tell you what, Drew knows. Back in November, Drew can tell you. I was like, Drew, when 12 a.m. hits tonight, I'm going to buy you subscription to this. We're going to be on it. And she was like, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready. And then it was, oh no, you have to have 10,000 seats for it. I was like, oh no. Sorry, Drew. We're not going to get it.
Right at midnight, I'm logging onto my computer, like, Neil,
Ooh.
I don't see it yet. You haven't bought it yet.
And I was like, sorry, I cannot spend $30,000 this month. Sorry. Yep. So now it's all the way down. Yeah, basically I bought it for everybody in the business and it only cost, a couple of grand instead of $30,000 a month. All right, looking good. So let's just talk very briefly here because Microsoft Graph is a weird term. If you've never, considered it before, it's just Microsoft's way of branding the fact that it knows everything about you. Okay, so Microsoft Graph is just the big picture concept that it knows the people, the emails, the chat messages, the tasks, the meetings. It knows everything about everybody inside the organization. And this is why Microsoft 365 Copilot is so intriguing to me. Microsoft Copilot without the 365 or ChatGPT or Bard, people can find a lot of good uses for those, right? You're talking to it, you're like, hey, help me brainstorm something. And there's a give and take, and it's very useful and valuable. But at a certain point, I go, okay, well, I'm not trying to brainstorm anything right now, so I'm not really thinking about going over to ChatGPT today. I'm not really using it moment to moment. But within the Microsoft 365 environment, the fact that it knows all of my employees, the fact that it knows every email, every task, every item that's on my calendar, every meeting that we have ever had, and the transcripts from those meetings means that I can ask it things that are very, very deep and rich into the business itself. So that's why I think for me, this is a no-brainer. I'm going to stick with it, and it's going to be part of the culture within my organization. Now, a quick note, because you're saying, oh, the Microsoft Graph is everything Microsoft knows about everybody. Let's be very clear here. Microsoft 365 Copilot uses the same types of permissions that SharePoint and Teams uses, in that it gives you results back that are quote unquote security trimmed. So if two people have access to different sets of folders, different messages, and things like that, when person A on the left asks Microsoft 365 Copilot a question, the answer will only be derived from the things that person A has access to. And when person B asks a question of Microsoft 365 Copilot, then the answers to those questions are only derived from the things that that person has access to. So if there is material in a SharePoint site and person B does not have access to that SharePoint site, keep going and call it ChatGPT. Microsoft 365 Copilot is not going to tell you about what's going on inside that SharePoint site. If there was a meeting that you were not invited to, Copilot is not going to tell you what happened during that meeting. It's only those things that you actually have access to. So Copilot is acting as an extension of yourself. Okay. And one more little area here, everybody. So again, anybody inside your organization who has a standard Microsoft E3 or E5 subscription can have a subscription for Copilot from Microsoft 365 tacked on, and they only charge you on a yearly basis. You cannot pay month to month. I'll actually show this here. Let me pull up my, here we go. So if I wanted to, you see here, there's the Copilot from Microsoft 365 licenses right there. And if I wanted to go in and purchase some services, here we go. Here is the Copilot from Microsoft 365. And as you can see, the minimum that you're allowed to spend here is $360 a license. So if I click onto this, I can only pay on the 1 year or the 3 year pattern. I cannot pay on a monthly pattern here, but you can see that I can buy one license at a time. Okay, so Chris is asking the question for the Microsoft 365 family account. If you get 365 Copilot, would one license cover for everybody, or would each person need to have their own fee? It's a great question. So if there is a single family license, oh, that is an interesting question. I haven't looked at that one, Chris. Okay. The family account, right, is for everybody under the umbrella. I think if it's one subscription, you may be able to get away with just one $20. Yeah, exactly. Send me an email. I'll see if I can track that one down for you. I have been so focused on my business stuff, I haven't looked at the family accounts. Thanks very much for asking the question. All right. Now, the other thing that we want to do here, and this is the, so again, bullet point number 2, everybody in your business needs to know what the permissions on their files are, needs to know what the permissions on their SharePoint sites are. And if you aren't comfortable with that, well, it's the same thing as search. Let's be very frank here, everybody. If you have users who are going into Microsoft 365 and running a search, that search is probably bringing up things they shouldn't have access to if the permissions are out of whack. And so Copilot is no different. If you ask Copilot a question and there are things that have permissions out of whack, those things will be surfaced. So you want to make sure that that's all in place. Now, this is the gotcha that I spent 2 weeks just being frustrated with Copilot. So if you go into your Teams admin center, you'll see there's an area here called meeting policies. And you want to make sure that in your meeting policies here, that you go in and find, here we go. There we go. So under recording and transcription right here, you can see that you have this Copilot concept, and you want to make sure that Copilot is turned on. Notice that Copilot can be turned on only with the transcript or turned on altogether. The difference here being that if there's a transcript, then of course Copilot can look at that transcript, and that makes things easier. If you turn on Copilot without the transcript, you're basically telling Copilot you're allowed to watch this meeting and not necessarily go to the transcript to see what's going on. So make sure that Copilot is enabled for your Teams meetings if that's what you want your organization to be able to do. And yeah, I've been able to configure this so that everything records, everything transcribes, and Copilot is always running in the background for you. Okay. Well, everybody, now I'm going to hand the ball over to the person who's going to take the fun part of today's webinar, which is just, hey, what kind of cool stuff can I do with it? So Drew, where do you want to go first?
Yeah, let's actually start in Teams since we have those screenshots on our slides, and then we can just kind of move out of the slides and into programs. I want to first note that with that Copilot setting turned on, all meetings will automatically start transcription. If you wanted to not transcribe a meeting, you would have to go into that individual meeting setting and turn it off. You can also turn it off within the meeting, If you're having a conversation, then you want to turn it off, you can do so. So you don't have to be fully recording the meeting in order to use Copilot. So I went ahead and screenshotted or took some screenshots in a live Teams meeting earlier today. And we can't log into a Teams meeting right now, and I can't join one and show you live what it looks like to be in a meeting. So I took some screenshots of that, and then we'll get into some meeting recaps. So first, right here in this meeting, I asked, was the contracts team mentioned in this meeting? I don't know about you, but I've been in some corporate meetings before where I was invited, and then your eyes kind of start to glaze over, and then you think, was I even mentioned, or was I just invited to this meeting and I have nothing to do with this? So what we can see here is that Copilot said, no, the contracts team was not mentioned in this meeting. The meeting was mostly about the Circle website, the content creation and promotion, and then the cat party for Neil's son's birthday. So you can see that this is very real. It's looking at what we're actually talking about here. And it does a pretty good job of recapping what that, hour-long session looked like, what we were talking about within the meeting.
The cat party was a great success, by the way. My son was ecstatic because he had a cake that was shaped like a cat food bowl that had fake cat food in it, and he played cat games for his birthday. My son's a little bit of a weirdo, but I love him dearly.
Yes. Okay, let's go ahead and look at the next one. Okay, so here, I had somebody who was acting as my manager, talking about whatever a manager may talk about in the meeting, and acting as, somebody that works for that manager. I asked, what question can I ask my manager to learn more about the content strategy she created? So she was talking about the content strategy, but maybe wasn't providing many details. And I thought this was super valuable to have as just somebody to help you, think of a professional sounding question, or what you want to learn about, and Copilot can help you out. So it let me know that a possible question you can ask your manager is, how do you measure the impact and effectiveness of our content across different platforms and channels? So yeah, this one I think is really valuable to use in a meeting. If you just want somebody to kind of formulate a more professional question, if you've ever gone to ChatGPT and you've said, like, can you rewrite this email more professionally? And you've copy and pasted something in, Copilot can kind of provide the same thing on the spot without providing more context about that meeting. And next one here. Oh, yeah, that was just a longer part of the screenshot than I could add in one screenshot. Okay, and then towards the end of the meeting, I, again, eyes glaze over in the meetings. I totally get it. Corporate, I think since COVID, they've had way too many meetings. So I just said, list the action items for me, in real time. And it said, there's no explicit action items mentioned for you in the transcript. However, based on context, it gave me some ideas. So again, I think this could be really valuable if you want to be more proactive. I think this could help you stand out where it said, nobody said directly, Drew, do this. But it gave me some ideas of ways to be an overachiever, which I love. Any questions on the chat within the actual meetings that are live? Before we move into real live demos, not just screenshots of live demos. Okay. Are the Copilot responses recorded? So if you keep, and I know Neil might have something to add in on this too. Actually, I can show you some. But your Copilot questions are personal to you and your account. So Neil could, maybe as the administrator, but Neil could never really go in and say, like, see, what did Drew ask? So if you ask that question about, like, how can I ask a professional question right now? Your manager won't see that. And then those will be recorded in the same Copilot chat. You can click it back open and access it. Is there anything else to add on that?
No, I would say one of the things you notice is that when you pull up the Copilot, it often has the history of the last few days of when you were using Copilot and shows you the questions that you were asking in there. And so you can click back to the history of those. And but yeah, I think the overall thing, like we were talking about before, anything that is put into Copilot is yours and yours alone. It isn't connected to anybody else's account or accessible to anybody else.
Oh, and that even if you're in a different meeting question, I know you can view the recap questions, which I'll get into in our demo here in just a moment, but I don't know about the in-meeting questions. Do you know about that, Neil?
So the in-meeting questions, so if you were in a different meeting and you asked Copilot about the meeting, I think you would have to go over if for example, I'll show it on my screen and then I'll let you share on your screen for the Power Automate section and things like that. Okay, so if I pull up my Teams, for example, over here, there we go. In Microsoft Teams, when you go to the top right-hand corner, basically anywhere, you see the Open Copilot area. And you can see in here that this is just your generic Teams Copilot conversation. Now, on the other hand, if you go into a meeting like this one, and you ask it questions about that meeting, right in here, it's going to have context to this meeting. So I'm thinking if you are in one meeting and you are trying to ask it questions about a different meeting, you really have to have basically it in a separate window or something along those lines, because this, I don't know if there's any way that you can tell it, hey, I'm going to ask you a question about the other meeting right now. Because the other thing about this is that, for example, when you run a search for information that was happening inside a meeting like this one, um, it's difficult to pinpoint the meeting that you're talking about. You have to say something like, there was a meeting Tuesday at 10 a.m. And it tries to figure out which one that you're talking about, but it's not always successful. So I've found personally that making sure that you have context in the specific meeting that you're interested in before asking it the question is usually the direction that you want to go. Gotcha. Perfect. Excellent, excellent. So Drew, do you want to take over screen share and show the other apps?
Absolutely. We will start again in Teams. Let's get everything shared here. Okay. All right. So this is actually the same meeting that Neil was just in. So we can see here that there is this recap tab at the top. If I go ahead and click this, I can see here that there were two different recordings of the meeting. It looks like somebody signed on a little early, and then this might have been the main meeting. You can see here that there is an AI notes section. So it will give me some basic bullet points about the meeting, and then it will tell me who said certain things. If I click meeting notes open, it will give me a more detailed version of this note. Up here, I can see a quick recap if any files were shared. I love this little view, maybe just because I love graphs so much, that it will show you in a colored, like dot kind of graph, who was talking when and for how long. So Neil was definitely the trainer of this class. And then if you go to mentions, it will see when I have been mentioned in this meeting, okay? And then you can go to transcript, you can view the full transcript, you can download that as normal. But then there's this little Copilot button up here in the top. If I click on this Copilot button, you can see here that actually, as I've been prepping for this, I've been asking Copilot questions. So here is where I meant you'll be able to see that transcript or the recorded version of what you've been asking Copilot. Now, I actually didn't check to see if this was in meeting, if I could see any of those questions. But we'll go ahead and start with a prompt. So first, let's say this I can see was a 3-hour class, and maybe as the trainer, I'm going to be taking over this class, or I'm going to be taking over this meeting. So what I might want to ask it first is to generate an outline of the class or of the meeting that I'm going to be leading, so I can start to work from there. So I might start by saying generate a moderate length outline of this class on Power BI and Excel. Okay. And I think it's important to notice that I added this moderate length text. So actually, I will copy this. Let's run this, and then I will take out the word moderate and show you what it generates here if I change that to a different word. Now, if you've ever used ChatGPT, things tend to load and generate pretty quickly. Copilot, since it's kind of fishing through all of this data, takes a bit longer. So hopefully we can get an answer soon. If not, I will just scroll up and show you what I've asked it previously today. There we go. Okay, so it will tell me a moderate length outline of this class on Power BI and Excel is, and it gives me 5 or 6 bullet points. Now, what I really want to point out that I think is amazing is these 1, 2, 3, it will cite where things came from. So here, this introduction and how they relate to Excel, it will actually link me to certain parts in the transcript when this was talked about. So here, I love this short outline, but I may need to go back in the transcript and check on what's being asked. Oh, let's see. We've got some questions. Oh, yeah. Yeah, sometimes, like Neil showed earlier, you have to have that Copilot section turned on. For the for a couple weeks, we were sitting there like, okay, we have Copilot, we think we've done the thing. And it takes just kind of toggling that on at the organization level. So that may be something to bring to your IT department or whoever's in charge there.
Right. And to Lori's extension here, where they have recap, but they don't see anything being generated. We also have, so we have Copilot that's helping with the generation here. And also some of those are a part of a separate subscription that I have also added for Teams Premium. Teams Premium has things like the timeline markers and the speaker markers built into it. So the foundational side of Teams will give you the transcript and the basic recap based on the transcript. Then you can ask Copilot to do things with that recap, and then Teams Premium can also add in things like the markers and things of that nature. So there's a couple of different levels that are at play there.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so now I'm just going to change this really quickly to show you what happens. If I say generate a short outline, we'll see what Copilot comes up with, but to Neil's point earlier, you have to be really specific with Copilot, and we'll see that a bit later when we get into just the Microsoft 365 web version of Copilot. Okay, and let's see, I asked it to give me a short outline, and it looks like it actually might be the same thing. So maybe this class was 3 hours was not long enough to do a moderate length outline. You may need to change that and say generate a long outline, and it may be more detailed. Okay, so the next thing I can do is, as an instructor, I might like to go back to my classes and see what did this client or what was being asked in this training or in this meeting after the fact. So I can ask that person at my company or a different company and follow up. So to do that, I might say summarize, the types of questions that were asked during this session. And we should be able to get a nice list of the types of questions that were asked. It always takes a little bit there. Let me actually just scroll up and see if we can see. Oh, and it looks like it generated it down here. Okay, so it says it seems to think that during this session, participants ask questions about outline, goals of the class, specific data sources. I might be able to say here, let's say, put these in a bulleted list. And let's see if it can change this, how this looks for me. Now, again, we have the citation where I can go back and see where this was talked about. Oftentimes, if there are lots of citations, it will give me an extra little drop down here where I can choose to see all of the generated citations. So here we can see, and this is not what we wanted. So you can see here that being really specific, maybe this was not specific enough. So I could come up here and say, summarize in a bulleted list the types of questions that were asked during this session. Prompts are really the main important thing with Copilot to make sure that you're kind of finessing and making sure that you refine how you're asking the questions of Copilot. Okay, and then let's go into one other meeting to recap and see if we can get some new information. So again, we have a similar meeting where we can see who has talked, the meeting notes. And then if we open up Copilot, we can see this was the screenshot from earlier, where was the contracts team mentioned in this meeting, and we see that they were not. And then let's see, since this was an internal team meeting, I might be able to ask, was there any feedback mentioned of the things I need to improve? So sometimes when I'm in meetings, taking notes can kind of distract from the overall meeting as a whole. And so this could be, Copilot can provide you a really, really amazing way to stay focused during the entire meeting, but also be able to go back and ask it some questions so that you have some notes from that meeting. Okay, and we can see here that there was no explicit feedback of things I need to improve. However, we can infer some possible areas of improvement from the following points. And again, it will cite where in the transcript this was said. Okay. Questions or ideas on this recap version in Teams? All right, amazing. let's keep it rolling. We will start in this Microsoft 365 version of Copilot. Now we can see that this is a little bit different than where Neil went previously. However, if he toggled to the work version, I believe that it ties into the same place where I'm at right now. So I'm just at Microsoft365.com. And then on the left-hand side, I am down in the Copilot section. And let's move this out of the way so we can see our prompt. Let's hide this. Okay. Now, there we go. Okay, so first what I want to start off is we're going to have it generate a one-pager of description for a longer class information document we have. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a document and we're going to have it summarize, make a shorter version. And then I'm also going to ask it to make a version that's more student friendly. So it's not in like a very technical language. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to say using information in. And then to access files or people in Copilot, you press the / button, and then you can see that it opens up this, this dialog box for me. So here under the all section, I can scroll through lots of different things. If I go under people, I can find people in my organization and cite them. We can go to the files and we can select specific files. Again, meetings, we can go to meetings, emails, we can cite certain emails. So here is where if you didn't want to type very specific emails to reference, you would use that / button and then find it in here. So under files, I'm going to use this maximizing your productivity with Power Automate. So here, this is a PDF that we've created. It's probably 10 pages. So when I click on it, you can see that it attaches the document. If at any point you never find the document you're looking for, you can always attach with this button and find that there. And you can see that that actually just opens the / button. Okay, so using the information in this, we are going to write a one-page description of what the students will learn in class. Now, the / is one way to add documents. You can also add documents by finding them in your OneDrive or your SharePoint. You can copy the link and then paste that directly into the chat box. And I'm also going to give it a further description here to write it so non-technical people can understand what the class is about. Okay, and let's see what this generates for us. Again, Copilot takes a little bit longer because it reads through your documents or your emails. So we can see here that it's given me a description. Again, here there's a citation where we can view where in the document this is talking about. There is a reference section down here that you can open and then further open, and this will provide you with the same link this does. I know I said write a one-page description. Now it's not going to, because we're not working in a Word document, it's not going to generate one for me, but I could click this copy button and I could copy it into a Word document, or if I was more specific and asked it to write a Word document, that could also work. Now let's open a new chat. And next we're going to do, I'm going to be on vacation in a couple weeks. And so I'm sure we've all taken vacations. We come back, my team's messages, I have 600 of them, and I don't know where to go or where to look. And reading through them is not always the most feasible option. So in Teams, we have an instructor group chat. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say summarize the last let's go 10 days in the instructor team discussion. And let's go and list any action items I should be working on. So now what this will do is in my teams, we can see here that there's this instructor teams discussion chat. I had to be very specific on which chat it should look at. If I'm not specific, if I just say summarize the last 10 days in chat, Copilot could go off anything in my Teams chat. And here, this list any action items, I'm just going to see if anyone has maybe talked about something I should be working on when I return from vacation, or they didn't know I was on vacation. So let's see here what this generates. Okay, so let's see on the last 10 days, and now this, I believe, is different than previously. I could actually show you. Oh, see, I used a different term. Okay, so this might be important to show. So I, up here, started with a different prompt, and then I refined it to the same prompt I'm working on now. And you can see here that this response is very different than this response that I just asked. So I opened a new chat. It's important to open a new chat when you're asking a new question. But if you are trying to generate the exact same response you had before in a different thread, you may get something different. So here I can see that there are 4 different things. It will tell me times when people talked about this. If I open the references again, I can see here that it will link me to the actual part in the chat that she said this. So if this summary is not good enough or it's not clear enough, you want to see exactly what they said. Those references would be where you want to look. Questions or ideas in this before we do something? Let's go do something quickly in Power Automate. Okay, so now I'm going to be working in make.powerautomate.com. And we have this new home page functionality where we can ask AI, we can describe an automation that we want to create, and AI will generate something for us. So let's say that I work in an HR department, and every Monday or every other Monday, I'm sending an email to managers, just reminding them to check and approve like hourly time cards. That's something that could be automated from your account that you may not have automated before. Now, if you've never worked in Power Automate, you may not know how to automate this yourself. So what I can do here is I can say let's go every Monday at say 10 a.m. And what's important here is I'm going to clarify which time zone I'm working in. And this is really, really cool. A really, really cool feature. If you've ever worked in Power Automate before, dates and times are really, really hard to work with, and especially with the different time zones. So here, it's really cool that we can add in the time zone, and Copilot will work on this for us. And we're going to have it send an email to managers at my organization. When I click on generate, it will take us to kind of a view that looks similar to what we've seen over here. But we can see here that this is connected to Power Automate, and now we'll get a little bit different of an answer. This will show me a suggested automation. And if you're not familiar with Power Automate, you may just see here like recurrent. So this is a recurring thing. It happens every Monday. I want it to get my information. I want it to get a group of people's information, and then I'm sending an email. If that looks right, you can click next, you'll see again that automation moves to the right-hand side and it will show you which apps are going to be connected. If I click create, this is the new Power Automate Designer. It's kind of this like infinite whiteboard view. We can click on each section of our automation. And if I click on recurrence, I can see that Copilot has added every 1 week on Mondays at 10. And we can see here this preview, it also says the same thing. And we can see here it didn't select a time zone, but my time zone runs, or my computer runs in Eastern Standard Time. So it's going to select that native local time zone. And then we can see here that we can send an email, type in the subject, the body of the email as normal. And now we have this really awesome automation that we don't have to email managers every week. Questions or ideas on this as we're kind of wrapping up here?
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for all that, Drew. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up our session with some basic overview conclusions and other items for us. So I think item number one that this really speaks to, and you saw a lot of this from Drew, is that if you have recorded material, if you have transcripts and things like that, the ability for Copilot to summarize and surface information is really, really, really very, very valuable. Now, I will just say personally, every time that I've tried to just say, hey, could you make this 75 slides for me? I've been rather disappointed in the 75 slides it made for me. But it does a really good job of helping us to surface information, helping us brainstorm, etc. And a lot of what we get out of AI, you can get out of the free AIs when you're just experimenting. So next week, Chrissy and I will be talking about Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, and OneNote. I definitely recommend that you take a look at that webinar. That is going to go into the chat here. And in addition to that, I highly recommend that you take a look at things like, well, what used to be called Bard. Of course, you want to look at Gemini, you want to look at ChatGPT, you want to look at Copilot online, and just experiment with how you prompt that, because the better prompts you put in, the better information you get out, etc. And lastly, I would say if you need anything at all, don't hesitate, email me. That's going into the chat here. Feel free to follow up with me if there's anything that you would like to dive deeper on. I know Chris had that question about the family accounts that I'd like to track down for him. And otherwise, I hope everybody has a wonderful weekend. Drew, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I hope you guys have a great weekend.
Enjoy, and we look forward to talking to you again really soon. Thanks, everybody.